Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Ask Me Anything. We're just going to let a few more folks come and join, but if you wouldn't mind going on the right-hand side and letting us know where everyone is joining us today. So you'll notice on the right-hand side of the panel, there is a chat feature, and it'd be cool if we could find out today as people trickle in where everyone is dialing in from. Chile, Montreal. Awesome. Ecuador. South Africa. Sounds like we have an amazing group of candidates with us today. This is awesome. Nigeria. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for coming today and submitting your questions. A lot of employers submitted their questions ahead of time for today's session with our Canadian immigration expert extraordinaire, Karan. Karan is a regulated immigration consultant who spent the last 5 years building a book of business and assisting our clients here at VanHack with all things immigration. According to his LinkedIn profile, his interests include the government of Canada, VanHack, and the voice of Vancouver's very own Ryan Reynolds. Welcome, Karan. I'm going to go over some housekeeping. First, before we get started, this session is going to be recorded and available to all post-webinar. Any resources that we talk about and discuss, we're going to wrap up and package with a bow in our post-event follow-up email. If you're an employer and you're looking to chat with one of our global mobility experts online, we would be happy at any time to jump on a call and discuss with you. To our candidates on the call, the team is busy. The growth team is busy looking for new employers to join VanHack. So I'd like to encourage you all to keep applying for positions that match your skill set. And you know that we're going to be there to support you and your family on your journey to Canada and to Europe. If you have any questions at all throughout the presentation, use this chat feature to put the questions in. And at the end of today's session, we are going to try to address them. And if we don't have the answers today, we'll try to address them after today's call. So Karan, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Megan. I think you give the best introduction, so I really appreciate it. And thanks for everyone being here. I'm glad you're all able to make it home yesterday. Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping on my side as well. The only thing I'll sort of share is just that, there have been a lot of changes this month to immigration and even to the global talent stream. This one, so we'll kind of go over those today. What I wanted to say, though, is just that, this is kind of just general information. So if you do need, if you have further questions or something specific about your own files or applications, like just, it's always good to look at getting some expert advice. And it's good to have some of this information and there's hopefully some takeaways that you can all, action after this call. So, okay, so without further ado, I'll jump right in. And maybe what I'll do is just kind of quickly share our agenda today. Just bring it up. Okay, so these are some of the changes that kind of we're gonna give you updates on. So I'll kick it right off and start with the first one. So just this month, this is specifically for the global talent stream. So if you have submitted any applications, some of them may have turned back because there's a new requirement for you to get authorization from some provinces to be able to hire foreign workers in Canada. So specifically, the provinces include BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. There doesn't seem to be any cost to any of these. Usually it's called something like a certificate of registration. Each province has a different name for it. But the main thing to know is that it's something you might want to apply for as soon as possible, really. You don't need to wait until you hire someone in order to apply for this provincial registration. Because right now, and especially because of this requirement, at first, like in BC, for instance, it was taking about 3 weeks to get this provincial registration. Now I think they're backlogged to about 5 or 6 weeks because of this new requirement. So if you are planning on, whether you're hiring someone in the next year or not, I think it would be a great idea to at least sign up for the certificate of registration so that when you do make a hire, you're ready to go. And again, those provinces are BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. It doesn't seem to be applicable in Ontario just yet. There's no certificate required there. But yeah, it's something I would recommend doing. And then you'll need to upload that certificate when you submit your Global Talent Stream application to Service Canada. Okay, so that was kind of just the big change. Another one is there have added some conditions that employers need to make. So one of the biggest conditions I found that is the biggest change is that employers now need to pay for private health insurance for any part of the employment when the foreign worker arrives in Canada that is not covered by provincial healthcare. So I'll say that a little bit more in layman's terms, but basically, let's just say you have a temporary foreign worker that you've hired and you have asked them, and they're coming to BC, for instance. If they're applying for MSP, it typically takes about 3 months for the medical service plan to kick in. So during that time, employers are now required to pay for healthcare for those individuals in that time period. Each province is going to be a little bit different. You'll find, for instance, in Ontario, healthcare right now kicks in right away, but that could change. So, excuse me, my recommendation would be just to just keep note of that, so that when someone arrives, you have maybe a healthcare provider ready to go that you've already communicated with and chatted with, so that you can sign them up for private health insurance as soon as possible. Sorry, some other conditions that are also now applicable is that you'd also need to provide the same type of occupation as you did in the LMIA. So if you've hired someone as a software developer, when they come to Canada, you also want to provide the same type of wage as well as the same type of employment and job duties. That kind of is consistent, but one thing that a lot of, I think, employers don't know that I thought maybe it's a good opportunity to share is that with most LMIA programs, if you want to give a salary increase at some point, you typically need to go through an entire LMIA process. But the really cool thing about the Global Talent Stream is that's not required. You do need to inform Service Canada just by email. You'd let them know that you want to increase this person's salary, what their LMIA number was when they first got hired, and then you can increase their salary immediately after letting them know. So that can be done afterwards. Okay, as I keep going, by the way, I know there might be some questions that are coming up. So please, as Meghan mentioned, just put them into the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them at the end of the call here. So, okay, I'll go over to the third point, which is online LMIA applications. This was, some of you may, if you've hired someone through the Global Talent Stream or done an LMIA application in the past, you may have received this over email by the government and then skimmed through it and may have picked up what it meant, and some of you may have just deleted it. But basically, in April of 2023, so coming up not too long from here, all Global Talent Stream applications, if you filled them out before, there's two ways of submitting them. So there's a form that you could fill out and then send by email, and there's also something called an LMIA portal. So you'd be able to create an account for your company and then submit applications through that portal. So going forward, all applications starting from April 2023 will have to be submitted using the LMIA portal. They can no longer be just emailed to Service Canada. The LMIA portal is great. Once you've set it up and you're ready to go, and you've done an application or two, it is, I would say, even faster than doing the form, but the initial setup can be a bit tedious. So another recommendation that I would have is to start that process now. You might, at some point, you might need to call Service Canada and get it set up, but it can take about 20-30 minutes maybe. But it might be helpful to do so that you're ready to go for April for any new applications that you are planning on submitting. Okay, I'll go over the next updates. So some big changes to NOC codes, as well as the salary requirements for the Global Talent Stream. So the NOC code specifically, maybe what I can do here is just show you our next slide. I think it'll provide some of the salaries there, as well as some of the changes that have happened to the NOC code. So basically what's happened is there are more codes that are related to IT. There, in this bucket, there used to be 6 codes in IT that were related to the Global Talent Stream, and a lot of those have been expanded. So maybe it's hard to see it there, but the data science is broken into 2 different categories. Web designers and developers have been broken up into web designers and web developers. And yeah, you can see a couple other splits there. The salaries seem to have also changed depending on where you are. In some provinces, cities, they've gone up, and some they've gone down. Some of the notable ones, I think software developers, the minimum requirement in Vancouver was about 89,000, and then those have dropped to about 85 in Vancouver. And in Toronto, they seem to have gone up a little bit with software developers. But anyways, it has shifted. And some of you may not know how to actually calculate that. So maybe I can also show you how to get this figure if you're sort of searching on your own. In fact, why don't I do that now? Just quickly, just reshare. These knock codes were all updated in just a week ago or so, and they haven't really been updated in quite a long time. I think we're looking at about 5 years. So I think almost every World Cup that we're seeing. Sorry, give me one moment. There we go. So the best way to do it is to go to the Job Bank of Canada website, and you can search whatever code you'd like there. So for instance, if you're searching a job title, you can say web developers. That's already up right now, but it will present the code that's applicable to it. So you can search that, and then in the city or province that you're looking at. So this is not where your company's headquartered, but where the employee will be working. So if they'll be working in Toronto, Vancouver, working remotely, that's okay, but it does need to be where their work location will be. So let's assume Vancouver for a second. I'll just search that. Oops, technical difficulties. Okay, I'll just show it here for now. While I hope my internet's still on, but you'll see, in just to give you an example, in British Columbia, you're looking at about 28.30. You have to look at the median wage. Let's see if I actually click British Columbia, if it'll let me go into it. Yes, it does. Okay, and then we can look at Lower Mainland. So the salary requirement there is 28.30, and then you would extrapolate that over a yearly period, which I think the easiest calculation is just multiplying it by 2080 if you're on a 40-hour work week, and that covers the median. So you always have to look at the median wage when related to the global talent stream. The other couple things that are neat on this website, if you're taking a look, is you can kind of see the description of the job duties that this type of position would normally hold, as well as the requirements. So the important part about looking at the requirements is that some will require a degree. So this one, for instance, says that a degree in web design or business is required. So just make sure that the candidate that you're hiring does have a degree if it's in that occupation. All right, I'll just stop my sharing here. Give me one moment.
I have a quick question for you here, Karan. I'm just going to jump in. Yeah, so people get a closed work permit. I guess it's like 3 years, right? And quite often our van hackers thrive in their new companies, and they get promoted. So maybe they started off and they get promoted to a team lead position. What does the employer need to do? Because it's not just a case of bumping up the salaries, because I guess their duties have changed significantly. What does an employer need to do to make that and to plan for that?
Yeah, good question. Service Canada really takes temporary foreign workers' rights really seriously, and I think part of that is doing the job duties that they were intended to do and being paid fairly. So if the job duties are changing, typically you'd have to call Service Canada as an employer, let them know that we want to give this person a promotion, and it's really up to them, and they'll sort of advise what to do. In most cases, if the knock code is changing, so for instance, if someone is a software engineer and they're going into maybe like a lead position where they're maybe more of a management position, it's probable that a new LMIA would be required. So a new LMIA, and then changing the work permit to go from the software engineer position into the new one. Yeah, that's probably the best process to follow.
Thanks, Karan.
Yeah, no problem. Good question. Okay, any other questions, please? Yeah, feel free to throw them up there. I think I do see one quick question here, just talking about some of the if there's any sort of timeline changes to the global talent stream. I know IRCC is really working hard to hire people. Like that's something that they have committed to doing this year. And so we're hoping that some of the timelines are going down, especially on the work permit side. What I'm finding is because of that provincial registration that's required in some provinces, it can add a bit of time to the process. So as I was saying, it was supposed to take about 3 weeks to get that certificate. It's taking about 4 to 5 weeks now. So But again, applying for that earlier as possible. And then, so that's the only thing that is adding a bit to the timelines, is getting that certificate of registration for some of the provinces, but it's not applicable to every province. The other thing to know about that provincial registration is that if you're a company in Ontario and that's your headquarters, but you're hiring someone and they are coming to BC, you still need that certificate of registration. And it is okay to apply for a BC certificate of registration as an Ontario employer. You don't need to be registered or anything or have a business address in BC in order to have that certificate.
Another question from the audience, Hannah. When did that provincial certificate in British Columbia take effect?
They were still accepting applications. I think it came officially into effect at the end of September. I believe it was September 26th. But I think they were only starting to enforce it mid-October or so. But now all applications, if you submit it without the certificate of registration, they will turn it back. No problem, Anna. Okay, we have some time left, so feel free to, again, add your questions there. The only other thing that I think we wanted to sort of touch on was some updates from our side as well. So I'll share my screen one more time. One big change that we had internally this month was our new global mobility platform for employers. So this is just a demo version. So if you are an employer, these aren't real candidates. Do not try to look them up on LinkedIn. They do not exist. But if you're looking at them here, when you log in, this should show all of your hires that you currently have made. And you can, when you click on any one of them, you're able to see and remind yourself of the position that they hold, where they are in the visa pipeline process, as well as their salary. This salary is, again, this is a demo platform, so please ignore that salary. If you're able to find someone at that salary, then I would definitely hire them, but it won't meet the medium wage, of course. But anyways, so yeah, a lot of details are provided here. You can also chat directly with the candidate. You can also add some notes here. So if you are trying to find out, you want to speak to the consultant that's working on your file and helping you through the immigration process, this is a great tool to use, and you can sort of chat but back and forth with them, directly on the VanHack platform, and you'll be able to see that for all your candidates. So depending on where they are, if they're at if the LMI has been approved or their work permit's been submitted, and then you'd be notified as well directly, and you can also see the history of what's happened in that with that candidate.
Big shout out to the tech team at VanHack and your team, Karan, for working on that. I know that the growth team and our recruiting team is often fielding questions about the process, and being able to have that transparency for our clients on what's happening and the progression is absolutely fantastic. We're really looking forward to using this well into the future. So well done. Okay, so before wrapping up, what are some of the key takeaways that you would say that employers specifically should take from today's session?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that if maybe before the end of the year, a couple of good things to do would just be, if needed, to get that certificate of registration started, save yourself some time for in the future, as well as looking into that LMIA portal as well, because I think because it can take a little bit of time to set that up, and you'll have to submit all applications going forward through there. Those two things definitely I would encourage employers to just spend a half an hour just getting those set up and moving forward that way. Yeah, it'll save a lot of time during crunch time.
Absolutely. Anything to shorten that process. We know as business and the business community, often our voices aren't necessarily heard when it comes to or we're not collectively working towards talking to the government. The government takes out and says that they're going to bring 400,000 workers, but the community doesn't really have a chance to talk about some of this, the desires for making this process shorter, right? So I think any insight, what can the business community do together to rally, do you think? To be able to kind of shorten some of these timelines and processes, because I always find that government makes commitments, and I know that the government's also struggling to find workers as well, I'm sure, in these times as well. But what would you say, Karan, would be a good opportunity for businesses to work together?
Yeah, there's a lot of good organizations out there. Some MPs that I think you could talk to as well. Your local MPs are good places to go and bring sort of any sort of concerns. There's organizations such as CCI. I know VanHack's part of them as well, where we always try to provide feedback to the government directly and try to push these timelines. So I think that's the best way to sort of get together and conversations like these.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Karan. I know that we have some questions from some of the candidates today that have joined us on the call. So a candidate question came through. Let's just take a quick look. I have a closed work permit in Vancouver and I need to apply for a PNP Tech BC program. How can I apply for that and what requirements are needed for the employer to do that?
Yeah, good question. For the BCPNP program, actually, because of the new changes, they kind of held off on any invitations for BCPNP for about a month while the NOCs were changed. But BCPNP, I think they did a draw 2 days ago. So requirement-wise for the employer, they need to, if it's within the Lower Mainland in BC, if that's where the work location is, the employer needs to have at least 5 employees in BC. That's kind of one of the major requirements for them. And then on top of that, they'll need to provide about 7 documents, one including a municipal business license, which I think a lot of companies don't have. So it's another thing to sign up for. It doesn't seem to be required by a lot of tech companies, but for BCPNP, it is necessities. And so it typically, I'm seeing, takes about a month or 2 to get that municipal business license. So if you have any employees that are looking to go through the BCPNP tech program, I highly recommend getting that municipal business license. You'll need a certificate of your incorporation certificate. The employer will also need to provide a job offer that's offering you a position for at least 1 year going forward. Detailed job description, just an about little blurb of them, of the employer itself, and a recommendation letter as well. So those are kind of the documents that the employer will need to provide. On the employee side, the 2 things I'd recommend doing: the BCPNP has a paper-based program. They also have an online program through Express Entry. I typically recommend that one as it's a little bit faster. It's quite a bit faster, I should say, but it does require a language test as well as an education assessment. So the typical organization people use is WES. And so you'd want to get your education, if it's a bachelor's, master's, assessed by this organization.
Cool. We have another question, and I think it's maybe can add to this question. But for folks that are looking to immigrate and start a business, as well as quite often we have employers that reach out to us in America that are looking to move north of the 49th to attract tech talent, because immigration is very difficult, as we know, in the USA. What would be your advice for people trying to start a business in Canada, and what does that whole process, if you can elaborate at all on that, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of a different scenario based on if it's a candidate that wants to move here and start a business. I think that's honestly, there's less programs available for candidates. There are some provincial programs. I would say if you already have an existing business in your home country, and you want to move here, there are some options like opening a business here and then transferring yourself to that business. There are a few requirements to show on that side, but it's something that I would maybe talk to a professional and see. But it's called the Intra-Company Transfer Program, so that's something that you could use to come in and do that. If you're a company, for instance, in the US, and you wanted to start operations in Canada and maybe hire and start putting a tech team together here, it's a little more straightforward. Like, you could go through the global talent stream. You'd have to set up a company as well, and then use the global talent stream to bring in some talent. You don't need to have any employees here before you do that as well. So there are some options for both candidates and companies to come in and start businesses in Canada. I think hopefully will also foster more business programs as well going forward, because it helps the Canadian economy.
All right. Well, thank you, Karan, for joining us today and having this discussion. If anybody, wants to reach out, that email again, that's going to be sent to you post webinar is going to have a lot of information. It's going to have our updated global mobility guide. It's going to have links to have discussions with our team. Thank you for joining us, Karan. I know you're under the weather today with a cold, so thank you for coming and taking the Ryan Reynolds joke so well. Thanks a lot. And for everybody, keep on being positive as we end 2022. Keep on applying for roles, and see you next time.